Okay, I wanted to start by asking the boys some questions. Nothing that you have to respond to, just something to think about. Um, does your mom drive a car? Do your sisters play sports? Do your sisters go to school and get the same education as you do? Did your mom attend college? Does your mom have life insurance? Did your mom ever own an apartment? Does your mom have a credit card? Does your mom have a bank account? If the answer was yes to any of these questions, let me tell you why the women in your life are allowed to have a credit card, drive a car, attend schooling, and be fully insured. The answer is feminism. Now, before you all shut down and turn away, allow me to define the word that is so commonly misunderstood. Feminism is the belief that women should have the same opportunities and rights as men. It's the belief that a woman should be paid the same as her male counterpart for the same amount of work. It's the belief that a woman should be allowed to drive a car, have a bank account, own her own property, go to school, and have a career. These rights should not be considered women's rights. They should be considered human rights. Next, I wanted to ask a different series of questions directed towards my male and female classmates. Again, just something to think about. Do you believe that a woman should prioritize staying at home and being a traditional wife over her career should she be given the choice? Do you think women should be prohibited from wearing a sports bra and shorts at the gym? Have you ever been told boys will be boys, or have you ever said boys will be boys to excuse some form of verbal abuse? Last one, have you ever assumed a woman to be incapable of a job or task because, since she was female, was too emotional? If the answer was yes to any of these questions, you either have a statistical problem or have encountered this statistical problem. The problem, you might be asking, is called misogyny. Misogyny is the contempt or prejudice against women that can range anywhere from stereotypes on women to sexual harassment. This is not an attack on anybody, it is simply a fact and a problem that needs to stop. My last series of questions is directed towards my female classmates. Have you ever been called bossy for wanting to be in charge of a game or play? Has a boy ever been rude to you, and when you went to an adult about the issue, been told he probably just has a crush on you? For my older classmates who can drive, have you ever felt unsafe at a gas station or on a run? Have you ever left a place because you felt uncomfortable for a reason you couldn't explain? These questions are the sad reality of being a girl, and no matter how minor, are forms of misogyny. Whether you consider yourself a feminist or not, the feeling of belittlement is a universal thing for women. And even if you haven't noticed it, it is there, and we have all been subject to it. Men. This is not just an issue for women. This stretches to men as well. Most of you have probably been held to the standard that you must not show weakness or vulnerability. Because of this impossible standard in men, almost 80% of suicides are men. Because of the stereotype that men should not be vulnerable or show emotion, over 11% of men suffer from substance disorders, while only 6% are women. I believe it is healthy to cry when you are sad, and to grieve when grief is due. Feeling emotion is not a feminine action, it is a human one. If men are not held to the standard that they need to be overpowering and dominating, then women will not be overpowered and dominated over. Now that we have those definitions down, it's time to bring out the real topic of my speech today. Why do Christian institutions have such a rejection towards feminism? I would say that, in short, the answer to the question would be the level of feminism that most people have taken it to within the past 20 years. So let's talk about the 4 waves of feminism. The first wave took place through the late 1800s through the 1920s. It focused on basic human rights that women did not have. For example, the right to dress the way they wanted, speech, and legal equity. For contrast, these rules are still in place today in countries like Afghanistan and Israel, where women are not allowed to have an education, are not allowed to speak in public, and are allowed to be married off at the age of 9. Without the first wave, the women around you would be living the same fate as so many women on the other side of the world. The second wave of feminism covered the 1960s through the 80s and fought against stereotypes like women staying home to clean and have children, which nothing is wrong with, but is simply advocated for the right to choose between a career or a family. The second wave also covered workplace discrimination and reproductive rights. Okay, let's pause. Reproductive rights in the 70s faced so many huge changes, but here is where most people start to see feminism as wrong. The biggest change in reproductive rights made abortions legal nationwide. While I am not advocating for abortion, and I believe it is point blank wrong, the change that was made in the 70s is still important because it gave the women who were having issues in pregnancy or were dying to be saved at the loss of her child. For example, imagine a woman who was pregnant and was deathly sick, but could not take the medication to save herself because her baby would die. But her baby was too young to be taken out of her womb and was suffering from her sickness as well, and would die if the woman died. Should the woman be permitted to have an abortion so she should live? I am not here to tell you what to think, but though the loss of an unborn child is monumental, the loss of both mother and child would be more devastating. This was the thought process of the 1970s reproductive rights and allowed many women to get medical help they needed to live. However, you can see how this abortion advocating has grown and is now a massive problem in today's world. Since 1973, there have been 63 million legal abortions. The reason for an abortion is so vital because I find it hard to believe that all 63 million of those deaths were life or death situations for the mother. Let's look at the third wave. The third wave of feminism covered street rights, like unnecessary comments women received walking down the sidewalk, or inadvertent misogyny they would get from men during the 1990s through 2010. Though I personally believe this is still a problem in today's world, and it didn't change a whole lot, it was still important to bring light to just how disgusting and normalized things men say to women have become. An experiment was conducted in New York City, where a team placed a woman wearing a black crew-neck t-shirt and jeans, just a regular woman, to walk through New York for an hour. She had a camera on her recording the whole hour, and it caught every single derogatory comment men made at her. For those of you who've seen the Barbie movie, the part where Barbie and Ken first come to the real world, and all those construction workers are saying really bold, disgusting things at Barbie, that part wasn't fiction, and is still a massive issue still. Finally, the fourth wave takes place through the mid-2010s to present day. This wave focuses on sexual harassment and the increase in rape victims. It also covers body positivity, and here's where most people hit a wall, transgender inclusion. The sexual harassment is definitely an issue that needs attention, and I feel the fourth wave helps this. 3 out of 10 women are raped, stalked, or physically assaulted, where an estimated 500,000 women are raped each year. Only 63% of sexual harassment is ever reported, and because of this section of advocating, the fourth wave is detrimental to society. However, the fourth wave of feminism receives a bad rap because of the obnoxious and toddler-like behavior from women who believe biological men who believe themselves to be women are actually women. The fourth wave of feminism deserves this bad rap because of the level of brainwashing it takes to get women to believe men are women. When men couldn't stop Catherine Switzer from running the Boston Marathon, and when they couldn't stop Gertrude Ederle from swimming the English Channel, men decided they would use feminism to destroy and ruin women's sports from the inside out. Transgender men are men who are so set on seeping into women's lives that they need to be in women's sports, in women's locker rooms, and in women's bathrooms. The issue of transgender people is just another way for men to control what women do, and are playing the victims to do so. Because of this section of the fourth wave, I am disappointed in what feminism has become. So why do Christian organizations in particular hate feminism? Not only would I say Christians are dissuaded by feminism because of what it's become, but also because of the Bible verses people think contradict the idea of feminism. There's of course the obvious verse, 1 Corinthians 14:34-35, where Paul instructs women to remain silent in the churches. This verse is so constantly taken out of context that it probably is the reason so many middle-aged men don't like hearing women speak in public. If Paul meant all women should never speak in the church and should ask all their questions at home, what is Paul doing with a woman named Priscilla, who helped him preach a lot of the time? In Acts 18, Priscilla corrects Apollos to preach the word of God more accurately, Acts 18:26. And if Paul really thought women should be silent when he contradicts himself, then he contradicts himself in Romans 16, when he praises for the many women who have been at his side proclaiming the gospel. The real meaning of 1 Corinthians 14:34-35 in context is that the church of Corinth was in chaos. Paul was instructing uneducated women from interrupting services and disrupting the people around them. This verse isn't a rule for all women, it's a correction to disorder in the Corinth church. As we see in the Bible, Priscilla co-taught with Apollos, and Philip's daughters prophesied in Acts 21:9. Paul preached in Galatians 3 that in Christ it does not matter if you are male or female. All believers are God's children, called to lead and proclaim the gospel. The idea of feminism was good and vital to the progress of our world. However, this speech advocates for the idea of it and the things that it has done for the benefit, and not for the things that it has hurt. Men in women's sports and 63 million deaths are what makes me disappointed and disgusted with some aspects of feminism. Feminism is misunderstood in the Christian organizations, and they often just ignore it rather than engage in it. Christianity does not condone feminism or women's rights. Some of the most powerful women who ever lived are main characters in Bible stories. However, it is important to know when to draw the line when advocating for the word that has so many definitions to so many different people. I know I didn't cover a lot of things that needed to be covered in this speech, so as a closing remark to give you all before I end, I just needed to say that this world needs feminism. It needed feminism when your daughters, mothers, aunts, grandmothers, cousins, friends, coworkers were denied jobs, access to parks, the choice to wear pants, shirts, sneakers, the ability to show their hair in public, the right to even speak in public, the ability to vote for our leaders, the right to run a marathon, the ability to choose whom to marry. This is not just America's issue. Women are still denied their human rights across the globe. The world needs feminism just as much as it did back then, because all feminism is the question for the boot to be removed from our necks, so that we can become CEOs and business owners, so we can serve our country, so that we can be more than we were limited to be. My ability to give birth to life is a gift, but because I have that ability, that does not mean that I am subject to be a machine for man's misunderstanding of authority. Thank you.